claim to be the best, and surely there are different views out there, but I feel that these are the most successful ways in the years that I've played to build a Space Marine force. I hope you enjoy what you're going to hear, and please leave your comments below. The units that I'm going to be covering today are the Space Marine Tactical Squads. I believe the Tactical Squad in the Space Marine Codex, standard Space Marine Codex, not talking about any of the chapter-specific codex. I think the Tactical Squad is the best troop choice in the game. Stats are pretty much above average in every area, other than wounds and what you can expect. They're, on top of their stats being so good, their special rules and equipment makes them so flexible in every situation. Now, granted, you do kind of fall into the jack of all trades, master of none, but with their stats being so high, really the master of none isn't really too much of a bog down as long as you're modestly intelligent and can just weigh the dice in your favor. The standard bolter, is one of the most powerful weapons that a standard infantry unit can have on top of their massive stats, which I keep mentioning, and their close combat ability with that toughness 4 and 3+ armor save isn't too shabby either. They're able to split forces, ignore basic morale rules that all their armies cringe at, and able to secure objectives is amazing. Some golden rules that I sit on with tactical squads are 10-man or no man. If you're going to take a tactical squad, you almost have to run a 10-man unit. I see no benefit to running anything less. Obviously that's when you unlock your special and heavy weapons to use, and with the ability of combat squads, there's no reason not to take them. With that as well, I don't see any point to not take any dedicated transport. Be whatever your flavor is, Rhino, Razorback, or Drop Pod. I think all of them have their benefits and deficits, but at how cheap they are and what they're capable of doing and what they're capable of making your tactical squad do, which is more important, there's really no reason not to take them unless you're just really hard up on points, but I think for 40 points you can free up a little bit. A big one that I get a lot is whether to take the Power Fist or the Power Sword, or Power Weapon as you would call it. It really comes down to taste on top of what the rest of your army's like. If you're lacking an anti-tank, or your gaming group has a lot of vehicles, or more importantly has a lot of walkers, you might want to take the Power Fist. It is generally more expensive by almost 50%, so watch out for overuse of the Power Fist, because in my past experience, the Power Fist doesn't get to be used as much as you'd like. Obviously, the initiative deficit is also a huge thing to think about, especially when going against infantry. And with wound allocation the way it is, I personally don't like the Power Fist, because now your sergeants are generally costing upwards of 50 some odd points, and a really bad wound allocation roll could end up burning all those points easily. Personally, I take power weapons. I only ever take Power Fist in my Death Guard units, but that's chaos. We'll stay away from that. I personally do not like combi weapons. A lot of people have their own personal equipment biases. Some people don't like plasma, some people don't like this, don't like that. My only bias really is I don't like combi weapons. I don't like spending points on a one-shot weapon. Granted, it does have the bolter aspect to it still, but I would much prefer to just spend the points on a full weapon that I have or not. With Space Marines coming standard with a pistol, taking a Melta or a Flamer or something odd like that isn't too damning for them when it comes to charging or any of the like. I know I talked about only assault weapons, but you get the idea. They still have a pistol, they can do other things. After you've thought, or rather before you think about your equipment, you should probably think about what role the tactical squad is going to be playing. And that has to fit into the overall composition of your army and what they all plan to do. I think the tactical squad is the best when it's working in tandem with your elites, fast attack, or heavy support choices, basically assisting them in what they're doing. If you like Devastators or heavy weapon support or any sort of tanks or anything like that, running some heavy weapons with a tactical squad nearby to either protect them or lay down additional fire is really nice. If you have deep strikers or things that come in later or come in fast, clearing the area of the landing zone with a drop pod assault can be really powerful as they start focusing on your tactical squads instead of your expensive assault units moving in. And also the full tactical squad army with rhinos, or however you like to take them, just 6 units of 10 tactical squads, is a very viable choice. I'll bet it's a little boring in my personal taste, but it can be a good devastating power, especially with Razorbacks. One of my favorite builds is the range support. You would use that to assist Devastators, Dreadnoughts, Predators, all of that. I kind of break it up into 2 aspects. You either have the defensive line or the countercharge. Defensive line, this build is pretty flexible to personal preference when it comes to equipment. At the cost of the Codex, it's an absolute steal to take the Melta Missile Launcher or the Power Sword, especially the Melta and the Missile Launcher. You're laying heavy fire support and taking, and you're not only able to take down light infantry very easily with the bolter stats, but with the missile launcher and Melta, if the target of opportunity comes, if you have a target of opportunity come, the ability to shoot down light transports or light tanks is very nice. Also, with taking a few tactical squads, you water down your opponent's target priority, which I find is a extremely useful benefit. If you take multiple of these units, since you're spending so few points on special weapons and things like that, you can really afford to buy Razorbacks, which are my favorite for this build, or other things. So you can afford to have, 5 tactical squads, 4 or 5 tactical squads with 4 or 5 Razorbacks. If you also have 3 Predators right next to them, it's really difficult for your opponent to choose a target because the tactical squads are laying as much fire down as the Predators, in fact, generally more. So you're fairly expensive. Predators are pretty cheap, but a little bit more expensive for what they can do than tactical squads. If you take your squads and you split them on deployment so that your heavy weapons can sit back, this is a very common tactic, and then your sergeant with the Melta can move forward to kind of keep back any assaulters and lay down fire and do counter charges just in case anybody gets too close. Your Razorbacks can kind of just be a turret and laying down fire. I like giving it just a standard Melta, just because, 1, it's cheap and it pops tanks. Even if you don't have any tanks to go against, it's really good at taking heavy infantry, light infantry. It can take just about anything. Worst case scenario, you also have the pistol plus Melta's assault weapons. You can't go wrong with assault weapons. Missile launcher, probably the most versatile heavy weapon in the game. It can do a lot of things. Once again, it comes to the whole master of nothing, but it can definitely be a bane to a lot of armies that are very different than one another. And the power sword, I just like because it's cheap and gives some deterrent to assaulters. Cheap little upgrade to keep people on their toes. And kind of what I went into the other build is the counter charge, where you have the 5-man unit with the squad sergeant and the special weapon standing by with the heavy 5-man unit behind them, ready to kind of stop chargers. Which is the same build, just keep it cheap. Obviously, if you want to take a plasma cannon because of personal preference, you're increasing your costs a little bit, but of course the weapons are better, so you'll be doing a lot more. I'll bet it's a little more along the lines of you have to focus more on this, so it can get a little funky with terrain and close combat happening, but it could work. Another maneuver that I like to do, and it's probably really common, really more on a fluff line than really a tactical line, is Steel Rain, as probably a lot of people would call it. Just a shit ton of drop pods, just dropping them all in there, doing just crazy amounts of damage. Drop pods are the greatest deep strike unit in the game by far. Just their ability to not destroy themselves on impact is great. Just delivering tactical squads everywhere you go is great. Melta, multi-Melta, it's really the only time that you can take a multi-Melta on a tactical squad without feeling like an idiot. The multi-Melta in a drop pod is very dangerous for your opponent. They have to deal with that multi-Melta, which leaves your, if you combat squad out of the drop pod, leaves your sergeant and your Melta squad a little better off. I like combat squatting out of drop pods just because I like combat squatting always. I mean, granted, not always is a good idea, but I haven't been in a situation yet that I haven't done it. But I've definitely seen times where you shouldn't. It really just comes down to victory points and what the objective is. Another one is a Rhino Rush. Just putting 10-man guys barreling down, just 6 rhinos barreling down and just full of guys. Taking as few special weapons, or as cheap a special weapons you can do, just because it's really about bodies at this point. Plasma guns are really good use for this one, and any heavy weapon really. The heavy weapons don't really matter at this point because you're generally moving around, but the heavy bolter can be good for holding an objective and then just laying down fire. I'm not a huge fan of the Space Marine armies for various reasons. I might go over that at a later time, but I think it can be a very good starting army for a lot of players, or kind of, if you go in a fluff direction, can be a really good army to play. I don't really like vehicle upgrades for any army, especially the Space Marines. I don't think they really have any useful vehicle upgrades. I don't really like making tanks any more expensive than they already are, because though tanks are what I consider to be a little overpowered in 5th edition, I will say that it's a lot of eggs in one basket. One really good roll from your opponent can really ruin your day on an expensive tank. Tactical squads themselves, try to keep them as cheap as possible. Your Space Marines averaging out to about 16 points. Some people say 15. I lean closer to 16. Each is a fairly expensive, but you get a lot out of it. Adding an extra special weapon or heavy weapon that's expensive honestly is not going to add much to your squad, and really most of the special weapons, other than the plasma, which has its own drawbacks, but like your Melta, is generally going to take away from the ability of your squad, as you're going to be focusing on firing at tanks instead of infantry, which Space Marines really excel at taking out light infantry. And the heavy weapons generally slow down your Space Marines, which your Space Marines are best at mid-range fighting, which is your 12-inch fighting. I've mentioned it. Don't always split up your squads. It's not a great idea all the time, but best judgment, 90% of the time, is probably a decent idea. Don't forget that the tactical squad is definitely your backbone of any Space Marine army. 300-point squad of Vanguard vets are really cool, and they do a lot of stuff, but at the end of the game, they can't claim objectives. Plus, it's a point sink. You're getting 10 guys that are worth so many points that if they take fire, they die just like a tactical squad. You just have to be very careful with units like that, and your tactical squads can help you not only deter you from taking heavy point units just to fit in more tactical squads, but can also water down the target priority, which I'll talk about target priority later. I think Razorbacks are really undercosted right now, and they are great. Obviously, the Razorback spam's all over the place, and I wouldn't suggest going directly to that, but it's a viable unit still. Thanks a lot for listening, and hopefully I can bring more episodes of the Tactica to you guys if people are interested. Have a good one.